James Payne. He noticed, no, he let us know, unfortunately, we left an E off his name. And Joe Gitterman, who we're having trouble connecting with, but we hope to do that soon. But anyways, let's the session format. Some of you may have been here for a number of these before, but this is going to be a bit longer session if we find if Joe Gitterman gets here. We have 4 presenters tonight, at least on paper. 60-80-minute session tonight. We're planned to have a 15-minute presentation for each of the 4, and then presenters will pace themselves. Just ask for this screen to be advanced, and I'll do that. And Steve will give us a time remainder at the end of the 14th minute, and then we'll wait. We found it works probably better to have everybody hold their questions and then have an open discussion Q&A at the end. So anyway, but let's start first with.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Smith. I am coming to you from the Lakes region of New Hampshire. I have been a member for a long time, but I don't participate that much because I work full time, and I'm in New Hampshire. But I always enjoy when I do get to participate with you folks. I remember one time doing a show down at a bank in Boston that I guess you did an annual thing with it. That's how long I've been involved. Bank, the building had an opening in the middle of it. Does that ring a bell? No? Okay. Well, anyways, how about if we move on to the second page.
Okay. Oh, jeez. Now it's not advancing. Oh, there we go. Okay.
There we go. Okay, so I've decided to show you a few of my clay sculptures. I don't do a lot of clay sculptures now. I found that they were very heavy in terms of having to mail them to shows, and I love clay. I still use it a lot, but not as much. These 2 pieces, the one on the left is a flying dream. I don't know if you've ever done a piece from a dream. I dreamed I was flying, but my heart was too heavy, and I was dipping into the water, and it was a very vivid dream, and I really enjoyed illustrating that one in clay. And the one on the right is Nurture Nature. I think that nature is probably the best artist of all, but having said that, we like to emulate that particular source of inspiration. How about the next one more? Okay, right there. Yeah. So here are a couple more clay pieces. The one on the left is a fertility symbol I made for my daughter, who is attempting to get through a pregnancy. She's having a little difficulty with that, so I decided to think about what was the very first piece of artwork was a fertility sculpture. So I made my own, and the one in the middle I make for people. Sometimes I'll give shrines to people who've lost a child. I have a couple of friends who've unfortunately had that happen, and they really appreciated having a place to put some memories of their child. And the one on the right comes inspired from the coast of Maine. I absolutely love the coast of Maine. It is a rock, but it's made out of clay. And if you've ever watched a Maine sunset, the colors on the rocks are just amazing. And I tried to capture that in this particular sculpture, and I added gold just because I wanted to. So next slide. Then I decided I wanted to try working with altered books and book sculptures, and I do a fair amount of bookmaking with my students in their elementary age. So we do board books, and I give them just 2 pages, and they go and have a theme and adorn those 4 pages, the front, the back, and the inside. These were Fragile Nature series. I started with the one in the middle, using acorns and whirligigs. And I'm kind of like Joseph Campbell, Joseph Cornell, excuse me. He had a lot of collections of stuff. I have a lot of collections of stuff too. I that's kind of how I start, by collecting from my treasures, and then I come up with these pieces. These were fused board books. So the board book is fused and it's a substrate. And I find that to be a really nice size piece of art that people can, I know it's like some people make monumental art, but I don't do that very often. I'd love to learn how to do some of the outdoor ways of doing that, but I have not yet. So next slide. Then I moved on to doing some other things with altered books. The one on the left is based on the Daruma doll from Japan. And it was the first piece of art I made that included a crumb tray. I don't know if you've ever seen crumb trays in restaurants. I've only been to one. It was at the Chateau Frontenac up in Quebec, where the waiter comes along and sweeps all his crumbs into the tray. I thought that was fascinating. And I have done a number of pieces of mixed media sculpture that have crumb trays in them. And the one on the right was made, it's a Zen garden that I made out of a prehistoric art book. And the pieces that are set into it come from my grandfather's house. He had a lot of treasures at his house, and I just turned them into a Zen garden. And so that was just one of the many things that comes into my head. Next slide. If everybody was gone or what. Okay, so these are altered book sculptures, and the ones on the left are called non-utilitarian objects. I really love the Necrosoft. They were pewter artists, and these are crumb trays from them that are tucked inside the altered books. I do use a scroll saw to cut a lot of these pieces. And the one on the right is a water meditation. There's a lot of mandala themed areas on both sides, and the cloth in the middle is what represents the water flowing, and if you can look closely, there's some fish in there. So there's just a never-ending amount of things that you can do with books and altering and mixed media. Next slide. Okay, this one was inspired by mental illness. I had a parent who had mental illness, and of course it had a profound effect on me. I made the book. If you look on the left, the tongue, you can see it says psychopathic personalities. It was a book I found from the 1940s, and there's some interesting things on it. One good thing it had was a chapter on how art in the home is very good for your mood. So that was good. I like that. But I did a lot of cutting of book covers that you see all the different parts of the dragon's hair and such came from using the scroll saw. And I think the hardest part of making this one was those horns that are coming out of it. It was some big heavy tool that I tucked in there, and that was quite a project. And there's two crumb trays, one on the front, and then on the back there are actually two tails. And I think if we go to the next slide, I can show you the second tail. Okay, so yes, one of the tails on the right-hand side represents hope. The other one is just your traditional tail. We have buttons and some descriptions, and we have a marching band marching, and they're making lots of noise with their drums, and anybody who has cymbals is smashing it on their head. So pretty powerful piece. It was pretty cathartic. So I think we all make sculptures that represent things that we've experienced. And so this is one of those. Next slide. Okay, then I started making sculptures, mixing altered books and also foam core. And so the one on the right-hand side, which is called Critical Mass, I wanted to see how big I could make a sculpture out of foam core. So basically there's probably about 24 sheets put together to make this particular sculpture. You can see how thick it is by looking inside the sections. There are dowels in there, glue, and I've also got paint and surface decoration. There's a whole lot of stuff holding it together. And on the left side is a piece called The Secret Garden. And those are the two sides of it. And along with it, I talked about the analogy of Western thought and Eastern thought, and people who come from different perceptions of the world, or different opinions on things, and how it can be possible if we come together to all work together and not argue. So anyways, can we move on to the next slide? Because I want to show you some things about the critical mass piece.
Okay, this is very weird. It won't advance, same way it was happening before.
Okay, well, whenever you can do that, I'll continue to talk from here. The pieces inside critical mass, I was kind of poking fun at the female form. And if you look in the two openings, you see a little bikini there. And the bikini is basically some, I do a lot of collecting of things. Those are pieces of jewelry that I would never in a million years wear, that I purchased because I could repurpose them. And the surface is done with, you've probably all seen the texture in an onion bag. So we have that on the surface, and poured sand and glue, and the top is a hand-formed bunch of trash metals that I made into a finial. Oh, there you go, there you go. So the process, you can kind of see in the bottom left how the dowels hold it together in addition to the glue. On the bottom right, you can see that I start with a handmade stencil to make the shapes. And there's my old ancient scroll saw and the foam core. And I think that's about as big as I would ever try to do a foam core sculpture.
One more minute, please.
Oh, okay. All right, so let's keep going. Okay, finishing surfaces, we've talked about that already. Next, yeah, this one is about a woman with the glass ceiling stereotype, and here's a woman with her knitting needle popping some balloons that are made out of glass. Next. And this is a series I've been working on. It's the sarcophagus series. If you look on the right-hand side, I was very pleased to have won that award for that one. It's called let's see. Apparel for Political Discourse. I made that after being inspired by an argument. Somebody was arguing with me and actually yelling at me about some politics. And so that one.
Can we finish now soon? It's past 14 minutes and 15 minutes.
Oh, is it really? Okay. Yes. Well, if you want to stop there, that's fine. The rest of them are all about that particular theme. And then at the bottom, I had a couple of humorous things. You can just flip through them. These are all. Keep going. And these are just some humorous ones. And that is a book I have coming out that I used mixed media on.
Okay. Thank you. And I apologize for all the mishaps at the beginning. Hopefully the rest of the presentations will go smooth smoother. So thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, Kimberly. Okay, so we get to the next person, Lisa Benson. Hopefully yours goes work smoothly. So
Can you hear me?
you can, yep.
Woohoo! All right, that's a good start. So my name is Lisa Benson, and I live near Boston. I'm in Waltham, Mass. And I've actually been in the Sculpture Association for about a year now. I just renewed my membership, so it's been a really fun year. I've exhibited more in the last year than I think I've had in my entire life. And I had just gotten back into making a lot of art. So it's been great. So thank you very much for welcoming me in, and I'm excited to present. So the piece that you see on the screen right now was actually my thesis piece for my master's program. It's cast in plaster. I mainly work in clay and then cast in plaster, or occasionally a resin material. And then I'll paint or patina the piece. And this piece was about sort of the culmination of a journey. The middle is the whole piece, and the left and right are details. Next, please.
Here he goes again.
That's okay. I could talk about this until it decides to move forward. It sounds like your computer's
The lag.
today, which, you know, I get it. But yeah, so this piece was if you look in the detail on the right, you can see like a staircase, and that's sort of inspired by hiking and doing some pilgrimages. And now my most recent art creation, who's 4, has just entered the house. So hopefully her dad will keep her away from the room. But then I'll just have her say hi real quick. Hey, Olivia. You can say hi, but I'm presenting right now. Want to say hi? Okay, bye. Okay, this next piece, she may or may not come up. This next piece is the same thing. You can come hug me, but I'm talking to some people. Okay. This is my most recent art creation. But anyway, so I need to get home. Okay. Sure, I'll keep the door open. Is the same. Okay, it's the same theme as the last piece, but depicted more literally. It's a relief sculpture. Again, the right is a detail, and the left is the full piece, and it's depicting scenes from a pilgrimage that I went on in Japan. Next, please.
Okay, here it's going again. Same.
Oh, and this is a self-portrait. I work, or I'm inspired a lot by really sort of traditional figurative art, and this was inspired by Della Robbia, but instead of a Mother Mary, I put myself in the portrait, and in some ways it was a bit of a study to try to just learn how to sculpt, and you know, and also express something at the same time. Next. This is obviously not a sculpture, but a lot of what I do is relief sculpture, so it's very drawing heavy. And so I do keep up a drawing practice, and I have migraines, so this piece is actually a self-portrait, the way it feels like to have a migraine. Next. And then this is, I guess, maybe the inner piece I strive for in those moments. That's just a simple waterfall done in plaster, sculpted in clay and cast in plaster, showing just a scene from my imagination. Next, please. Going back to the migraine theme, I started to create a few pieces that relate to that theme in sort of a symbolic level. So I created this piece with a world upside down, which was how I was feeling at the time, having my world sort of turned upside down by the health issue and everything that went along with it. And those chairs I included floating all around are a lot like the chairs you might see at a doctor's office waiting room. Next, please. This piece is another one in that theme. It was inspired by Caravaggio, and that's sort of like a Christ-like figure. And when I was looking at, Christian art and the suffering of Christ, I felt like he was front and center in a lot of those artworks. And a lot of the times in our modern society, it feels like we put pain and suffering underground. So that's what I did in this piece. Next, please. And then, as you just saw, I had a child, and that started to change some of the themes around my art. And so this was a piece I did largely around motherhood and giving birth. It's called Birth, and the figure is underground again, but not necessarily in the same way as the last figure, because there's life coming from the experience. And it's sort of the womb symbolically, as well as like the cycles of life. This again is clay that at the right is the clay model, and the left is the cast plaster, which I gave a patina. And next, please. So a lot of the work that you've seen up till now is highly personal, but more recently I've started to look outside my own personal experience. And these are sampling of some of the pieces that I'll be going through next with the slides. And I'm calling it Windows and Mirrors. It's different windows into other worlds I either hear about in conversation or sometimes on a podcast. And it's called Windows and Mirrors because the mirror, you could be looking at one of these and see yourself in it. And if you don't see yourself, then it's a window and you're looking into someone else's world. So that whether it's a window or a mirror, it depends on the viewer. Next, please. So this is one of the first pieces in that series. It's called Shopping Cart Babies. And to me, it's like a well wishes for a story I heard of a two female couple hoping to conceive through IVF. And, they've bought their babies now and they're happy. So that's what that piece is about. Next, please. I just got a lick of a lollipop. So this piece is called Tripods. And it's about okay, Olivia, go. Okay. I'll be quiet. Okay. This it's about a three-legged cat and her owner. And the owner has a walking stick and the three-legged cat has 3 legs. So they're both tripods. Next, please. This piece is called Keep Your Head Up. And it shows someone going through a rough time. And with these pieces, I've also used LED lights to light them from above, because a lot of them are about seeing them in light and in darkness. But this one is a little different because it has a flickering light behind that door that you see the character or the female figure going towards. And next, please.
Well, now it will not proceed the way it's been.
Sorry,
Was that- Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
This one is called Looking for a Spot, and it's someone. The setting is Brooklyn or New York City, and there's a no parking sign, and he has parked there anyway, and his drawings have blown into the wind. So that's sort of like the artist trying to make it in New York City. And next, please. This one is called Everyone I Meet Is Nice. And it's a story I heard about a truck driver who he was well educated and had studied philosophy, and then decided he just wanted to travel the world and drive a truck. And next is a detail of that. So you can get a sense of the colors and the sort of, in some of them I use more of an illustrative form of sculpture. So it's like a mixing of sculpting and drawing. And next, please.
Just quickly interject, what's the size of these?
Oh, that's a good question. They're with the board on the back, all included, about 6-inch squares. So they're quite small. They're really easy to work on at home, which is a big driver of the size, but I also like that they're these smaller worlds.
Right.
This one is called What's for Dinner, and it's a woman finding the only safe spot to put a burner and cook some dinner in a hotel room. So if you go to the next, it's hard to get a picture of what these look like in the dark with the LED light on. This is one of the ones I was able to get a fairly successful photo. So actually, one other thing to mention about these is that they have a motion sensor. So if you're walking up to them and the light is off, it'll sense you and the light will turn on. So I have a few on in my hallway, and if I get up in the middle of the night, they like all turn on. So but the viewing is supposed to be, you can view them in the day or in complete darkness, and either way they have a different light to them. Next, please. I think this is the last piece sharing tonight, and it's called Times Took for Granted. And I hesitate to even tell the story, but when there was someone from National Grid like digging up our road a couple months ago, and my daughter really wanted to see the digger, so we were out there watching, and I just got to talking to the guy. And in late 2020, I think it was, so before the vaccines had come out, his parents decided to eat lunch with friends, and one of them had COVID and only his mom survived. They all spread it to each other. So it was inspired by that really sad story. But with these, they don't really end at the story. I mean, I took it to what I think is a more joyful place. And I was thinking a little bit of like the Last Supper art and themes with that. And so I guess I hesitate to know if even telling this story is helpful to the piece.
1 more minute, Lisa.
Yeah, so if you go next. This is another photo of it in the dark, in the way that the light hits it, kind of frames the faces. And I think that's it.
Yeah, it was
All
it.
right on time.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Sorry again. I don't know why it moves along fine, and then the same gesture does not produce the same result. So anyway, thank you very much. Yeah.
No problem. Thank
Next
you.
is James Payne. Go ahead.
Hello, can you proceed to the next slide, please? So my name is James Payne. I am Vermont based. I live near White River Junction in the town of Reading. I have been working on my art practice for about 20 years. I majored in art in college, but then I did other things. I went into IT, I did some public safety, and I finally, about 20 years ago, I started focusing on my art. Can you, next slide, please? So you might recall back in the day, AOL would send us CDs every other week, and we'd just have piles of these AOL CDs sitting around. The only thing slightly more ubiquitous than an AOL CD is a plastic credit card from someplace, whether it's your own credit card that is expired or some plastic sliver that somebody has sent you to try to get you to sign up for their credit card or other program. About 20 years ago, I had this stack of credit cards and I started cutting them up and making little tiny sculptures out of them. And these are two very early examples of those works. Next slide, please. So as I moved along, I started adding color to them. This is literally a white credit card that I took and I cut up and bent. It's one piece of plastic. There's no breaks in it. It started out as a credit card, and then I added some red paint to it. Next slide, please. So this is that same credit card as the previous slide from a different angle. I do a lot of photography in addition to my sculpture work, and the two tend to go together pretty well. I produce a lot of what I call derivative works. Next slide, please. So this is a derivative work. This started out as a credit card that I painted and then cut and bent. And the picture behind it is actually taken of the London Tower Bridge from a boat passing underneath that I layered behind this image to foster some interest. Next slide, please. Coming back to the sculptural, this is also a single credit card, no breaks in it. If I'm working on a credit card sculpture and I happen to accidentally cut the plastic or break it, then I discard it. So all these works are a single credit card, unbroken, and then this one I embedded in acrylic. And this piece is about 5 by 5 by 3, and I really like it a lot. This piece is about 13 years old. After this, you know, even when I was working on my credit cards, I was thinking that these works would really be excellent if they were large. Next slide, please. So after credit cards, I moved on to sheets of PVC plastic. This was a 2 foot by 3 foot piece of PVC that I cut with a jigsaw and then melted over a furnace that I constructed from a construction site heater and cinder blocks and some mesh, blowing the hot air under the cut piece of plastic until it became pliable, and then twisting it and bending it until I found the result pleasing. I call this piece Anniversary. Next slide, please. This piece I call the Death Star, and this was constructed the same way. It started out as a sheet of PVC plastic that I cut with a jigsaw and then melted it until it was soft and manipulated it and then allowed it to harden again. Next slide, please. So the problem with PVC and the techniques that I had developed for working with it is that there is a size limitation. The largest piece that I did out of PVC was from a 3x4 sheet of PVC, about a ½ inch thick. And bigger than that, it's just really difficult to keep the whole thing warm enough to manipulate before it sets. So I started playing with wire mesh. And on the left, you can see what I call a beam, which is a piece of wire mesh bent into a square shape and then stitched with wire. On the right-hand side, you can see a piece called Argument that was shown at Sculpture Fest in Woodstock, Vermont, 7 years ago, I guess. And it's about 13 feet tall, constructed of these mesh beams, and really caught the light really well. Unfortunately, the wire mesh isn't really suited for outdoor display. This piece was bought by a private collector and lived at their home for several years, but unfortunately was finally crushed by the weight of snow. So obviously I had to do something different. Next slide, please. So one back.
One,
So I started working in computer-aided design, and this is the first example of a work that I produced in CAD. This piece is called Points of Contention. And now can you advance one slide, please? So you can see that it came out very faithfully to the CAD design. This is about 10 feet tall. And the year that I produced this work, I actually produced several copies of them, one of which I burned at a Burning Man regional event in Delaware, in front of several hundred people. And I don't have a picture of it actually burning, but it was very exciting. Next slide, please. So I continued on the computer-aided design path, working on artworks that were sort of derivative of the earlier ones. One thing that Kimberly said earlier in her presentation is how she likes to emulate art, emulate nature through her art. And that really spoke to me. I love to create curves and motion from straight static beams, and nature does the same thing. And so yeah, Kimberly, I really appreciated what you said. So I continued to work with computer-aided design. This is a design. Can you, next slide, please? As is this. These are two pieces of a series of works that I call Series 6. They're sort of like my sixth big design epiphany, if you will. And I've created a number of works based off this Series 6 design. Next slide, please. So this is the first Series 6 that was actually realized. This is called Prototype, and this was originally installed at Sculpture Fest in Woodstock, Vermont. It's now in a private collection in Sheffield, New York. And you can see that the size is getting bigger. This is about 8 or 10 feet tall and about 15 feet long. Next slide, please. This one is called Summer's End and was a direct commission. This is in a private collection. This is also that same Series 6 archetype. The white pieces I call beams or spars. Then the maroon pieces I call interstitials, and the main purpose of those is to keep the spars arranged at the right angles. And then there's pins holding the interstitials through the spars. And then there's a center spine that everything rotates around. So there's really only 3 or 4 pieces that make up this entire work. Next slide, please. So this is isolation, and this piece was installed in Jamestown, Rhode Island. It's my largest piece to date. It's currently in Olathe, Kansas, and this is also a Series 6 work. It ended up being huge like this. That season, I had been accepted into 2 shows, Sculpture Now in Lenox, Mass, and the Outdoor Arts Experience in Jamestown, Rhode Island. I had sourced all the materials. The wood is local Vermont spruce. And as you know, as it was getting close to the production date, although after I had bought the materials, COVID was becoming a thing, and Sculpture Now postponed their work for a year, and I was stuck with these 24 extra beams. And so I called up the Jamestown people and I said, how would you feel if I made my piece twice as large? And they hemmed and hawed for a minute, and then they finally decided that would be okay. And this is the result. This piece is called Isolation, and I named it for that unsettling feeling that we all had when COVID was becoming a thing. They picked a beautiful spot for it. I was really happy with how this came out. Next slide, please. So this is another image of isolation, sort of through it instead of from on top of it. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that I do a lot of photography as well as sculpture, and that I create these derivative pieces. This is a derivative of a CAD design that as of yet has not been produced, but this is an end-on version image of that sculpture. The background is salt deposits on a wall of a salt mine in Romania. And I just put it together. I find this interesting and compelling, but that's just me. Next slide, please.
James, 1 more minute, please.
Oh, 1 more? Okay. So this is another one of those. Next slide, please. So this is a piece that I did for Sculpture Now, Unrealized, at the Cape Cod Museum of Art. Thank you very much to the New England Sculpture Association for helping me find this show. Next slide, please. This is 2 pieces that I did this year. This is in North Bennington, Vermont. This is called Opposition. These are 10-foot spruce beams. Next slide, please. And this is at Sculpture Fest in Woodstock, Vermont. This is my first steel piece. This is called Underground. Next slide, please. So this shows the CAD drawing that I used to create Underground, and then an installation photograph showing how busy it is underground compared to above ground. And that's why I ended up naming it underground. I think that might be my last slide. Oh, no. Okay. So these are two things that I have, two irons that I have in the fire, if you will. This is a potential future sculptural piece that you saw the end-on version of in the that previous derivative I showed, and then one more slide. And this I call the visitor on the Hill of Snails. I am planning to cast this work in reinforced concrete, and the background is public parkland in Brasov, Romania. So thank you very much. I've been a member for about 2 years. I find it valuable. Zvi, thank you very much for asking me to participate, and thank you all for your time.
Thanks, James. Appreciate that. And especially the way you started with the credit card size, it scaled itself up as you went along. So anyway, did we get Joe?
Yes.
Oh, good. Excellent. I think I talked to Joe originally last year, recruiting him for a slam. So this is terrific. So hello, Joe Gitterman's our last person this evening, and let's take it away, Joe.
I'll talk up if that makes it any easier. I'll be quick and say that I had a 30-year history in Wall Street, during which I sculpted to get relaxation. And in 2011, so to speak, I was discovered and became a full-time sculptor. I've been very fortunate. I've had pieces on cruise lines, hotels like the Four Seasons, and I won't bore you with a list. Let's go to pictures, which to me is an important thing. Now,
Okay, just say next when you want to switch to the next image.
Reason that I've done this is I was fascinated as a child with dance, and I have tried to capture the motion of dance in a solid format, basically steel. What you see in front of you is called Couple 9, and it's about 8 feet tall. It's currently at Studio 80 in Old Lyme, Connecticut. They have a lovely sculpture park. Next, please.
Well, here we go again.
Well, I'll talk while you're trying to move it.
Yeah, sorry. I'll keep trying, but this.
I make maquettes mostly. What you're going to see this evening is a maquette that I've taken and worked with my fabricator. It's a joint venture. I've only been with one fabricator. I've done bronze casting, but quite honestly, the price of bronze today is out of my realm of possibilities. Each sculpture is unique. This is on point. It's over 8 feet tall. It's in St. Louis in a suburb type development. Next. This is a bronze piece that was commissioned for a house in Florida. Unfortunately, they have it outdoors and it's needed rehabilitation. In the very beginning, I was very fascinated by knots because a local international dance company called Polybus intertwined people, and this has for me that feeling of motion and people. Next. This color yellow is one of my very favorites, and it's about 5 feet tall, and it's in a private residence. Again, it's a continuation of my Knox series. Next. This is also in Sculpture Park up in Old Lyme, Connecticut. And it's stainless steel painted up black on one side and just raw steel on the other. Next. These were at the governor's mansions in Hartford, where he had a sculpture park for a number of years. And the commentary on this is that these mirrored pieces were a variation on them for my first commission. And I was told that the owners, who I never met, I should know that he thinks they're sales and she thinks that they're ballet dancers. So I don't think I should label things anymore. Next. This is a version of a maquette that's in stainless steel painted. It's tabletop size. Next. This is a miniature in bronze. Next. This is the beginning of a form that has fascinated me, and it's about 5 feet tall. It's bronze patinaed, both sides. I don't know if you can see it, but the edges are burnished, and I find that having the pure bronze on the outside is a tremendous advantage. Next, please. This was an experiment in putting 2 pieces together, which I had never done before, but they're reversed. The pieces facing each other are all stainless, and the backs of them are black. This is also up at Studio 80. Next, please. This piece is on its way to St. Joseph's University in Hartford, with a sister piece that's on a black metal base and it's polished bronze. Next, please. This is an early miniature. When I was making these in miniature, I mean, it's tabletop size. It's about 11 inches tall. I was working in sheet wax and casting them in bronze. And this is one of those pieces. Next. This is a bronze patina piece. It's about 5 feet tall. Thank you. Next. This very large bronze is one of 2 pieces. It was commissioned by the Norwegian Cruise Line, and it represents the most common knot that's used in sailing. They're both in the auditorium on each side of the main aisle, and I'm very proud of them because they're very large, very shiny, and I like the shape. Next, please.
Sorry.
Go back, I think.
All right, let me get to this.
Again, a piece that was done in wax and then cast. Next, please.
I have a question for pretty much any other artist that presented, because I'm not experienced working abstractly, and I've seen all 3 of you do some beautiful work in like the abstract realm, and I'm just wondering how the images or shapes come to you, or where do they come from? That's something that I haven't explored.
Well, speaking for myself, I usually I just get a sense of some shape that I want to model. And then I have a iterative process where I'll just keep working towards that shape. And I may end up with that shape, but I might end up with something totally different. And that's sort of the thing about the design process, is that you might end up in a totally different place where you thought you would.
Oh, so it's the same as
Absolutely.
figurative work. It's totally the same. Okay.
I'm a big fan of the 10,000 hours rule. And over my lifetime, I've spent a lot of time in the classroom, and I get inspired by what I'm teaching and what the kids do. And I've, walk into a museum or try something. I mean, it's just like everything is fodder for what you can use. And I just think that what you're doing is lovely. And so you don't have to turn it into something else.
Oh no, I'm just,
You know what I
it's
mean?
been
It's just
something I've always wondered. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that it's just beautiful to have everybody here doing something a little bit different, but we all have something in common. We're all creating, and we're all creating in 3D. So it's wonderful. So bravo.
I agree. Yeah.
I'll have a question about also about whether people are fabricating all this themselves at the bigger scale things, or whether you're having it fabricated, or how that's working. And also in the, well, anyway, sorry, that question first. For James and Joe.
So as my work has been getting larger, so I just made this this leap this year from wood to metal. It's
Right.
not sure, I'm not sure that I'm not going to produce more wood works, but I'm pushing into metal. And till now, I've done the fabrication myself with my crew, with some consulting assistance, some engineering to make sure that my large pieces are going to be safe and not crush somebody.
Right.
Machine tool operators to help me bore 2-inch holes through 6-inch beams, which is difficult to do in my backyard. The metal piece that I did this year, I had fabricated because I don't have real world experience in fabricating metal, and so it just wasn't really an option for me.
And what were the interstitial pieces, I guess your cost? What are those? Are those metal that hold the pins, that hold the beams, or?
So those big Series 6 pieces, those interstitial pieces are also wood.
Oh, okay.
The new metal piece, all the components were made of steel.
Right.
So James, I have a question to you. I noticed you're working with CAD software that allows you to create a beautiful symmetrical design, yet you seem to be shying away from having one symmetry line in your work. Is this coincidental or accidental?
It's intentional.
Okay.
The spiral shapes, all my pieces, the angles between the beams are all the same. but the lengths of the beams themselves might be different. And I find that the pieces are more engaging if they're not entirely symmetrical. Because we're not entirely symmetrical, right? Like everything in life is, it's a little bit of this and it's a little bit of that, and nothing is ever exactly the same.
I actually like it like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
The asymmetry. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes them feel alive.
Yeah. Well, for me, is if the right side is exactly a mere replica of the left side, some redundancy of information, right? Needs to be a slight difference, my opinion. Again.
Yeah.
I have a question for James.
It's like Kimberly was saying about emulating nature in art. Nature is not entirely symmetrical, right? Nature has all kinds of imperfections and inconsistencies, and I think that's the sort of thing that your eye catches. That's what you find interesting is the differences in the piece and how it's not exactly the same the whole way across.
Yeah.
So I have a question for James. I was looking at your work and it's so beautiful. It looks very kinetic. It looks like it's moving. It's like there's so much implied movement. And I was curious to know if you've ever seen Theo Jansen's work, the Strand Beasts. Yeah. Just kind of, yes, we're going to get up and take off, Yeah. So.
And people ask me from time to time, like, do they move? Have you thought about making them move? And that's not my practice, right? I mean, that's somebody else's art and they do a great job at it. And I just have to focus on my own practice and do my own thing. And, I want to imply the movement, but
yeah.
I don't see myself actually ever moving. It's just going to sit there and look like it's moving.
James and Joe, you had mentioned that you have pieces that had needed to have work redone to them because they were outdoors. James, you'd mentioned that you had a piece that was sold that disintegrated. How did you handle that?
I was super lucky, actually. The couple that bought that piece, Argument, that was made from the metal mesh, they really liked my work, and they bought that piece, and they put it in their yard, and it was sort of a learning experience for both of us, right? Like, I didn't know it was going to collapse under an ice storm, and they didn't know that either. And so we went through a couple of iterations of recreating the work, figuring out ways to brace it against the elements for the cold months. And when it finally didn't work out, they were really understanding. The white Series 6 piece that I showed that has, there was an image of me standing in that artwork. I created that for them on commission, based on their having bought that piece and being really interested in my art. So they have several of my pieces, and I do at least a yearly rehab where I go over and check it out and make sure that it's not rotting, or rehab it as needed. So I was just supremely lucky to find a couple of patrons that were just really supportive of my work.
By the way, Joe, I know we can't hear you, but you can hear us, I think. If you want to type anything, you can use the chat room and type your questions or answers to anything, and then I'll refer people to read it too. Because right now, so many people with their microphone open, I cannot use my phone. The feedback will be horrendous. Anyhow.
It's good to have understanding people buy your stuff. A number of years ago, somebody bought a big sort of tetrahedron shaped piece of oak burl, and it had a void in it, and they bought it at a show, and then they wrapped it up and put it in a closet for a few months. And when they got it out, little tiny spiders started crawling out of it. And it went, and apparently I reassured them that they were just rooming, they weren't boarding, and but apparently there had been a little tiny, spider's pod of eggs had gotten down into that cavity or something. So he sprayed it and it was fine, and they were good natured about it. But we want our work to be alive, but not literally.
Lisa, can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Hi. So yeah, I loved your bas relief and all the work you did there, but I think you're mostly in plaster. So I just wanted to know why you haven't really moved on to haven't done anything in bronze, or maybe I missed that in the.
Oh, why haven't I done anything in bronze? I don't know. I should probably just because it's expensive. I like to paint the pieces as well, but
Okay.
yeah, no, that's a really good question. I just never thought about doing it in bronze just for the cost, really.
Yeah. So you make you work in clay and then you make a mold,
Yes.
a rubber mold, or
rubber mold.
Okay.
Yeah, so the pieces some of them, there are like a couple copies of them. So I could, still make any of those in bronze.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. All right.
I actually have to run.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
to see
Lisa. Nice seeing your work.
Thank you. Nice seeing everyone else's.
Questions from anyone else? If not, I guess we may be finished. I guess it's now 8:21. So, well, and we've got a slow start, but sorry for all the array of technical problems here tonight. I certainly don't understand my part of it at any rate. So anyway, but we cobbled it together, I think, and it's really good to see the work again. There's people work I hadn't seen before, and people that hadn't met before. So I think it's such a great opportunity, as I said at the beginning, for us to get to know each other and each other's work. And the more we can do of that, the better. And it's one of the obvious disadvantages that we don't have a physical location where NISA can, assemble ourselves more often. I think we're emerging well from the pandemic experience, and thanks to the previous the president and vice president, the other people on the board, and now with Dominique and Kamal moving forward, I think we're, in a position to really leap forward.
Yeah, I wanted to also just
Right.
introduce
Go ahead.
myself
Go
real
ahead,
quick.
speak.
So I'm technically the president-elect. I'm working with the board right now, and then eventually, a lot of you know me already, but some of you don't. So I'll be starting my new role in January 1st. So I'm really excited about that. And if you have any questions or any inspiration or anything you want to tell us, please feel free to kind of reach out to us. I think all my info is on the website, and I think we'll be circulating. So please, we're the membership in NISA is there for its members, and we really want to work hard to make sure that that we're doing the right thing. So thank you.
And anybody who wants to volunteer, we're still looking for more.
That's right. So there's plenty of open slots left in the A&I committees and some of the other roles. So please, if anybody's got time, and some of it is actually fun. So it's a great group of people.
Thank you to all the presenters. You did a great job. So thank you.
Great. All right. To me, you're the main organizers here. Any last words?
Okay, good. Thank you, everybody.
I guess we're good. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, no, this was always a good event. So spread the word that most of the time our machinery works better than it did tonight. Anyway, so thank you again for the presenters and good to be with everybody. So thank you. Good night, and we'll see you next
Bye-bye.
month.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.